Hey and welcome. We're going to do the listening section for the CELPIP exam, so follow along with me as I do the listening section in real time. It'll take us 30 minutes. You can look at the answers at home. Today we're going to use the HZAD educational AI platform. So on this platform, it gives us more than 10 mock tests completely for free. And then with AI assisted marking, it'll show you your result, your CELPIP score, and it'll give you some feedback at the end of the exam so that you know how to improve. So get started. We're doing the listening test. Today we'll do number 7 right here. First of all, we're going to listen to a computer building discussion. So listen at home and then we'll answer questions. We have 8 questions in part 1. Let's go ahead. Next.
Hey Emma, I heard you're building a new custom computer. How's that going? I imagine it's pretty intricate, especially if you're aiming for high performance.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit more complex than I initially anticipated, but it's been a really rewarding project so far. I'm trying to strike the right balance between power and efficiency, which means carefully selecting each component. The challenge is not just getting the best parts, but making sure they all work seamlessly together. The motherboard, processor, and GPU have to be perfectly compatible, and I'm also looking at thermals to prevent overheating, especially since I'm planning to overclock the CPU.
Overclocking? That sounds intense. Doesn't that generate a lot more heat though? I mean, if you're pushing the CPU past its stock limits, you've got to be careful about cooling, right?
Okay, so it is AI generated. We have computer voices, but we hear 2 people, the man and the woman. We're going to look at the questions, but most importantly, we need to know their opinions and listening for keywords like the most difficult thing is, or when they make list of 3, like 1, 2, 3, that is likely going to be in one of the questions. Let's go ahead. Question number 1.
What does Emma find most challenging about building her custom computer?
Okay, we have 30 minutes on the clock. What do you find most challenging? Choosing the fastest, ensuring all components work seamlessly. I heard that word. Deciding between different GPUs. No. Selecting parts that are within her budget. No, definitely not that one. She talked about 3 things, like CPU, hard drive, blah, 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 and making sure that they all work seamlessly. So because I heard this keyword and I remember multiple components being talked about, I'm going with option B.
What specific concern does Emma mention regarding her plan to overclock the CPU?
Overclock the CPU. That was something about heating. Ensuring the motherboard. Now I don't know. Making sure the CPU can handle it without slowing down. Managing thermal to prevent overheating. I thought that was it. Balancing speed, performance, and price. Not price. Is either A or C. Ensuring the motherboard can handle the CPU. Okay, I heard overheating. We're going with that.
What does Jake express concern about when Emma mentions overclocking?
What does he express concern about? It's something about being like, wow, that's hard. Difficult finding the right part. The risk of damaging. Increased heat. Now I'm thinking that he actually talked about the increased heat and she talked about difficulty. The risk of damaging it. No, difficulty finding the right part. Okay, I'm going with heating again. I'm not 100% sure.
Exactly. Overclocking increases the clock speed, which definitely boosts performance, but you're right, it can cause serious thermal issues if you don't manage it properly. That's why I'm investing in a liquid cooling system. Air cooling would work fine for standard use, but with overclocking, the liquid cooling solution is more efficient at maintaining lower temperatures. It's not cheap, but I figure it's a worthwhile investment if I want to prolong the lifespan of the system and avoid thermal throttling.
Makes sense. It's impressive how detailed it gets. What about the storage side? Are you sticking with SSDs, or are you going for the newer NVMe drives?
Oh, definitely NVMe. SSDs are fast, but NVMe drives blow them out of the water in terms of speed. They connect directly to the motherboard and use PCIe lanes, which dramatically reduces the time it takes to load applications and transfer data. Plus, I'm opting for a decent amount of storage capacity, at least 2 TB, since I'll be using this machine for video editing, gaming, and some light 3D rendering. Storage speed is critical for handling large files without bottlenecks.
Ooh, a lot of good phrases there. So she was definitely talking about using liquid cooling because it's better. It was better, more efficient, etc. And I don't remember about the price. And then they're talking about SSD and NVD, different types of data storage. And she was on the side of NVD because it was extremely faster. She said it blows it out of the water. That means it's much better. Let's see.
Why does Emma prefer a liquid cooling system over air cooling for her custom computer?
Ooh, I know this one. Not the price. Liquid cooling is more efficient. Yes. Reduces the need for frequent. No. Okay, we know that. More efficient for overclocking. Next.
What benefit does Emma mention about using NVMe drives compared to SSDs?
The benefit of MMV. I still don't hear it. The benefit, not affordable, uses less energy. Oh, NMV. They are significantly faster in loading. Yes, MMV drives offer better. No, they are faster loading applications and transferring data. She said it's far better than SSDs. It blows it out of the water.
Why is storage speed particularly important to Emma for her custom computer build?
Oh, storage speed. She talked about the two things that she liked. One of them was gaming. Gaming and video editing, not general browsing. She plans to store a large amount of music. No, helps with backward processing. No, she definitely talked about gaming and video editing, which makes sense. You need more data more storage available if you are doing gaming and software editing.
Sounds like you're building a real powerhouse. Are you planning to install any custom software to monitor all these components once it's up and running? Definitely. I'm planning to install a system monitoring tool to keep an eye on the temperatures, fan speeds, and overall performance. It'll give me real-time feedback, especially when overclocking or pushing the system hard during rendering tasks. That way, I can adjust things if necessary before anything goes wrong. The goal is a high-performance build that's as reliable as it is powerful. Sounds like a solid plan. Can't wait to see it in action.
I think the voices were mixed up there, so that main speaker would have been Emma, the woman, but we still understand the audio. Okay, let's go to the questions.
What kind of software does Emma plan to install on her custom computer?
What kind of software does she want to install on her custom? Program to enhance gaming, a system monitoring tool to track temperatures and performance. I think so. A software to automate clocking, overclocking, and a program to manage data backups. I heard her talking about the software being directly for performance and temperature. So my best guess is that it's going to this one, monitor tool and tracking. It wasn't for gaming. Oh, I only have 2 seconds. Next.
Why does Emma want to monitor her system's components?
Why does she want to monitor the system's components? To optimize, to ensure the system runs at peak performance during demanding tasks, overall energy consumption, and graphical performance for gaming. Not D, not C. It was something to like optimize, but I also thought it was during demanding tasks. I'm going to go with B because it's the most logical. Next. All right, we're getting into part 2. We're going to hear about a gardening discussion. So part 2 is a conversation, an opinion between people, and then we'll have some questions following. Let's listen together. You will hear a conversation about growing tomatoes. I love tomatoes.
I noticed you've been growing tomatoes in your garden this year. How's the cultivation process going?
It's been both rewarding and challenging. The variety I chose, San Marzano, is quite particular in its growing conditions. They demand consistent sunlight and well-drained soil, and with the recent unpredictable weather patterns, maintaining those optimal conditions has required constant attention. But the flavor profile of these tomatoes makes the effort worthwhile, rich, sweet, and perfect for sauces.
I can imagine. I've read that managing the watering schedule for tomatoes is crucial. Too much or too little can affect the yield and even lead to issues like cracking or blossom end rot. How are you handling that balance?
Exactly. And that's been one of the toughest aspects. I've implemented a drip irrigation system to regulate moisture levels. It delivers water directly to the roots, minimizing evaporation and ensuring the plants receive a steady, controlled amount of water. Even so, the high humidity this season has increased the risk of fungal infections, so I've had to be proactive with pruning and airflow management to prevent overcrowding.
That sounds like quite the undertaking. But I bet the results will be amazing once they fully ripen.
Yes, hopefully. There's nothing quite like the taste of homegrown tomatoes, especially after such meticulous care.
Wow, he's gone to great lengths to grow these tomatoes. He has everything from air monitoring, because he said it was like too humid, so he has to monitor that. He has a drip irrigation, which means that the water goes directly to the roots. He's not watering it like a hose. He has to monitor a lot. Let's see the questions.
What challenge does Leo mention when growing San Marzano tomatoes?
San Marzano is like a type of tomato. Okay. Unique soil composition? No, I didn't hear that. Balancing demanding conditions? Yes. Adjusting to specific watering schedule? Well, that too. Controlling the plant's unique growth needs? Well, they're all kind of similar. But I'm going to go with balancing demanding environmental conditions because he talked mostly about that. The air quality, the water, the humidity. And we have 2 seconds, so B.
How does Leo ensure his tomatoes receive consistent moisture?
That was the drip irrigation, right? Using a drip irrigation system for steady hydration. Watering manually? No. Implementing soil? No. Relying on natural? No. Definitely drip irrigation. Drip, drip, drip.
What issue does high humidity cause for Leo's tomatoes?
High humidity, they said rotting, bursting or something. Like I remember it being like bursting. Okay. Fungal, root rot, nutrients, no. Fruit, no. Okay. Fungal growth risk. I think that's the answer because he did say rotting, but root rotting is different in tomatoes. I just happen to know about tomatoes. Fungal, like on the leaves.
What proactive steps has Leo taken to manage humidity's effect on his plants?
I don't remember. Managing humidity. Ooh, ensuring airflow? Yeah, no, it's not watering. I think he was controlling airflow. We didn't hear pH. Implementing humidity measures in the garden. B and D, I don't know. It was airflow because he talked about, he said, I have to manage airflow. And that made me think that he has an indoor garden. But I don't know. Airflow.
What is Leo's outlook on the results of his tomato growing efforts?
The taste is worth it. Ongoing, he expects positive results. He remains doubtful. No, he believes. I think B. He unsure about the ongoing. No, he said it positive results despite it being so difficult. It's worth the effort. So despite here means that it's good, although it takes a lot of work. So that seems right. Good. Let's get into part number 3. We're going to listen to a talk on butterflies. So this is usually, part number 3 is a lecture or some one speaker discussing about a topic. Usually it's a scientific topic, a technology topic. It goes more in depth about the subject. So you're not listening for speakers' opinions. However, you are listening for key details that the one speaker will be describing. So names, dates are mostly important. Their strong opinion on the topic. Why is it benefiting? Why is it not benefiting? The disadvantages. Let's get started. Conversation on butterflies.
Dr. Langston, thank you for joining us today to discuss your research on butterflies and their ecological significance. Could you start by providing an overview of your recent work in this area?
Thank you for having me. My research primarily focuses on the critical role butterflies play in maintaining biodiversity and the delicate balance of ecosystems. Butterflies, often overlooked in ecological studies, serve as both pollinators and bioindicators, meaning their presence or absence can reveal much about the health of an environment. Over the past few years, we've been studying how climate change, habitat loss, and pesticide use are affecting butterfly populations globally. Our aim is to better understand the cascading effects these stressors have on not only butterflies, but the larger ecosystems in which they function.
That's fascinating. With such a vital role in the ecosystem, is the decline of butterfly populations a major concern?
Absolutely. The decline in butterfly populations is an alarming signal of broader environmental degradation. Butterflies, being sensitive to changes in temperature and habitat quality, are often among the first species to be impacted by ecological shifts. Their decline can lead to reduced pollination, which affects plant reproduction and the overall health of ecosystems. Furthermore, butterflies are a part of complex food webs, serving as prey for birds and other animals. Thus, their disappearance can disrupt these food chains, causing ripple effects across various species.
Could you elaborate on some of the specific threats that are causing this decline?
Certainly, habitat loss is perhaps the most significant threat. Urbanization, agriculture, and deforestation are rapidly reducing the natural habitats that butterflies depend on. In addition, the widespread use of pesticides in agriculture is having a direct toxic effect on butterfly larvae and adults. Climate change is another factor, as shifting temperatures and weather patterns can disrupt migratory routes and breeding cycles. The combination of these threats is creating what we call habitat fragmentation, where butterfly populations become isolated and struggle to survive.
Given these challenges, what steps do you believe should be taken to protect butterflies and, by extension, the ecosystems they support?
A multifaceted approach is required. First, preserving and restoring butterfly habitats should be a top priority. This can involve establishing conservation areas, planting native flora that butterflies depend on, and creating wildlife corridors to connect fragmented habitat. Second, regulating pesticide use and encouraging sustainable agricultural practices would reduce the harmful impacts on butterfly populations. Finally, raising public awareness about the importance of butterflies and supporting citizen science initiatives could foster broader support for conservation efforts. Protecting butterflies is not just about preserving their beauty. It's about maintaining the health of ecosystems that are vital to all life.
Wow, okay. So as expected, she talked about her opinions and she also did a lot of listing of three. Three things that are affecting the butterflies, three outcomes, three solutions. So when we hear these lists of three, 1, 2, 3, definitely pay attention, try to memorize it as much as possible. Let's do questions.
1. What is the primary focus of Dr. Langston's research on butterflies?
So the primary focus of her research, examining the behavior, the role of the butterflies in biodiversity, investigating visual patterns, nothing about visual, tracking their no. She talked a lot about biodiversity, and then she continued to say how butterflies are the first indicating factor of other environmental consequences. So let's go B. Next.
2. What does Dr. Langston suggest is the impact of butterfly population decline?
The impact, pollination, I heard that a lot. So less butterflies means less pollination. Weakens overall food chain, disrupts eco-balance. That's kind of like a secondary effect, but not the main one. Loss of vegetation, that's a secondary effect. So directly, if we're thinking the first thing that happens, less butterflies means less pollination. Similar to bees. Next.
3. What are some of the main threats to butterfly populations, according to Dr. Langston?
Well, there was many. Pesticides in agricultural, that was one. Increased pollution, nope, never heard that. Urban expansion and wildlife overpopulation, well, that is one as well because she said lots of biodiversity or loss of habitat. Well, this one mentions habitat, so that's still better. Overbreeding, no. So pesticides and agriculture, and there was one more as well. Pesticides in agriculture. But anyways, this is the closest. Did I get my answer in?
4. What is Dr. Langston's term for the problem caused by isolating butterfly populations?
What is her term? Habitat fragmentation? Fragmentation? No, not disconnection. Species isolated syndrome? Nope. Biodiversity breakage. Yeah, habitat fragmentation. I remember hearing that. Fragments, pieces. Oh, next question.
5. What strategies does Dr. Langston propose to protect butterflies?
Ooh, she had a lot of. Okay, restoring wildlife habitats and reducing pesticides. That would coincide with our problems, biodiversity and agricultural pesticides. Breeding programs, limited urban. No, I didn't hear programs. Reducing butterfly species. Oh, reintroducing. No. Building greenhouses. No. Definitely this one. It goes similar to the question we had before.
6. Why does Dr. Langston believe raising public awareness about butterflies is important?
Oh, the beauty? No. Research funding? Perhaps. It ensures the survival of the ecosystem? Perhaps. Tourism? No, that's not what we want. Ooh. Either funding or survival of the ecosystem they support. I really don't remember. Let's go with funding. I don't know. All right. So we are going to listen to an educational policy debate. We'll hear a debate on funding policies. Now, in part 4, it does get more challenging because the debates are higher level. We have very proficient English people speaking about the topic. And most importantly, you have to pay attention to who is saying what part. For example, listen for the names, listen for their opinion, and you can also listen for their gender because that will help you, like the man named Tom said. Pay very close attention to their names and their opinions.
Dr. Laura Whitman, a renowned education policy expert, has recently proposed a sweeping reform aimed at addressing disparities in public school funding. Her initiative, titled the Equitable Funding Redistribution Act, advocates for reallocating state education funds based on student need rather than local property taxes, which currently create stark inequalities between affluent and underfunded districts. Whitman contends that the current system perpetuates systemic inequities, resulting in vast differences in educational quality, resources, and opportunities available to students across socio-economic backgrounds. She argues that by distributing funds more equitably, underprivileged schools could gain access to better facilities, qualified teachers, and comprehensive educational programs. However, the proposal has ignited a contentious debate. Dr. James Carlson, an economist specializing in public policy, has voiced strong opposition, arguing that the redistribution plan undermines the principle of local governance and community investment in education. According to Dr. Carlson, wealthier districts, which fund their schools through higher property taxes, have earned the right to maintain their superior resources and should not be penalized for their success. He also warns that such a policy could discourage investment in local education systems, as communities may feel disincentivized to contribute if their funds are redistributed elsewhere. The debate has prompted educators and policymakers to consider the broader implications of funding reform, raising difficult questions about fairness, responsibility, and the long-term viability of public education in an increasingly unequal society.
All right, so we have two very strong opinions. One for the distribution of funds across all districts in a community. So people would pay their taxes, but then it doesn't matter if it's a wealthy community or not. The funds get allocated to students in need. That's what equity is. So it's like equity redistribution. James something, on the other hand, he thinks that no, the tax allocations should stay within the district because we don't want to disinterest people in investing in education. Okay, something like that. Drop down questions. What is the primary goal of Dr. Whitman's Equitable Funding Redistribution Act? So Whitman was the woman, and we have 3 minutes. Increase funding for affluent schools? No, the affluent means they're wealthy. They already have money. Relocation based on students' needs? Yes. Enhance property tax contribution? Nope. Promote community investments? No. Equity means distributing something based on your need, not based on equality. So that makes sense. What issue does Dr. Whitman argue in the current school funding system that it perpetuates? The current funding. Lack of control? No. Systematic educational disparities? Yes. Unequal teacher distribution? No. Decline it? No. Systematic means it's built within the system. Educational disparities means that some schools are granted less money than others. There is disparity. There is a lack of balance. What concern does Dr. Carlson, that was the man, raise about the funding redistribution plan? He raised a lot. It reduces local autonomy? I don't know. It increases tax burdens? No. It discourages school? No. It weakens students' motivation. Okay, well, reduces local autonomy seems like it fits the most because that means the investments in a community are not controlled by the community. Those investments would get distributed to the greater province or state. So it's less control. What justification does Dr. Carlson provide for wealthier districts maintaining their superior resource? Probably something about enrollment. Their contributions deserve reward, kind of. They act better. They attract better educators. They generate higher student success. No. They promote innovation. No. Contribution. So they get the contributions that they deserve. They put in the money. They deserve the reward. What broader issue does the debate that Dr. Whitman proposed raise? The role of the state in intervention, kind of. Long-term sustainability of public schools. No. Impact of taxes on local community. Fairness of wealth. It kind of like talks about all of these, but I want to say like long-term sustainability. The role of the state intervention in education, or the role of the state intervention, but long-term sustainability is because taxes are a long-term investment. Okay, let's go with that. Next, part 5, we're listening to a crisis response. Generally, this is going to be a news channel or news reporting. So it moves a lot faster. It doesn't take breaks within the speaking. So we're going to have to listen very attentively. With the news, again, pay attention to the key events that happen. If there's any lists of 3, like this, this, and this, make sure that we remember those. And we have 8 questions. Let's go. And it's a video.
You know, remember your safety. Remember social distancing. You know, we can think of something that could be good for the board.
It seems like in this phase, with the reporting structure the way it is, our best bet is to the ask for help and encourage involvement model. Like,
yes.
just remind everybody, hey, we are truly in this together.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just like our Mexican movement, you know, we've really worked hard with the police officers and the chief that we do not ticketing is our last result. We don't ticket. We have the police officers with extra masks. We have the education. We have the, you know, just anything but ticketing. So that's what we're here for.
Rather focus on behavior rather than enforcement in that respect. Yep.
So if I could weigh in, you know, the notion that coming in under a review and goal setting in a normal with a normal backdrop is possibly the best way. I think it can be said that in the time of crisis, right, your real skill set and ability to interact is on display much more so than what could be masked
in a normal time.
That's
And
true.
both Jeff and the town's long established and staff have done really, really well in this particularly difficult period. There's a lot of things that have gotten done that are basically normal business at the same time in the storm. And I think that's a really good display of both what Jeff has brought, but also the resiliency of the town's staff and its resources.
Wow, that was hard. Okay, there was like zero context as to what they were actually talking about. I heard police, I heard ticketing. They want to avoid ticketing and instead take more of like a behavioral approach to something. But again, it wasn't clear what they were trying to ticket. I think this was like about police behaviors. They also said like in a crisis, people act differently than not in a crisis. That was hard. All right, questions. Let's see if we can even attempt this. According to the gentleman with the mustache, yeah. What does he consider the most effective strategy during the current phase? Implementing new protocol, engaging the community, adjusting reporting methods, collaborating with law enforcement to minimize strict enforcement actions. I kind of think it's engaging the community because they just really talked more about the people, not the rules. What approach does the lady describe regarding the methods of addressing violations of social distancing? Social distancing? So this was about COVID? No, she didn't want fines and penalties, focusing on providing resources like masks, reducing involvement of the law, kind of, advising officers to inform public. Yeah, they didn't want to penalize. They wanted to do anything but penalize people. Based on the host perspective, who was the host? What is considered the best way to tackle the current challenges? I want to guess it was the older guy. What was the best way to tackle the current challenges? Emphasizing important, strict adherence, encouraging unity, reminding everyone to stick together, stressing the necessity of issuing warnings, enhancing collaboration between law. No, they didn't want law. Sticking together. Let's go sticking together. I got 2 minutes. When discussing the collaboration with the police, what primary tactic does the lady emphasize the interaction with the Latino? There was no mention of Latino community. Ensuring compliance through delayed ticketing, avoiding stringent measures, maybe. Isolating non-compliant individuals, providing resources, keeping, I'm going to say providing resources, just based on their feeling. They didn't want anything involving law. What was the man with the mustache? What did he imply about the leadership skills? Something about crisis. Crises tend to mask real leadership. Yeah, I heard the word masks. High-level leadership qualities are more evident. No. During crisis, focusing on long-term goals. No. Okay, I heard... Oh, no. I heard something about masking leadership. We have 40 seconds. How does the man with the mustache perceive performance in the town staff? The staff managed outside the crisis. The staff focused on the management. The staff had insufficient resources. Devoted efforts to immersion. I don't know. Focus on crisis management. Daily tasks. In their approach to enforcing social distancing. 20 seconds. What can be said about the town's management? I don't know. Ticket pay according to the discussion. It serves as it is used in the method it has been. I'm gonna go. Tried. I'm just like 8 seconds. What can be said about the town's management? Crisis did not mostly obscure their leadership skills. Crisis interfered. No, they've been. Okay, I didn't get my last question. That was so hard because the video just didn't give me a lot of context. I don't remember hearing anything about the pandemic or COVID. I just heard things about policing and ticketing people. So tough time management. Next, part 6, listening to a discussion on urban vertical farming. That's when farming goes up. This one becomes the hardest because there are more questions with less time to answer. So it's mostly a speed challenge in part number 6. Let's go ahead. Yes.
Dr. Samuel Montgomery, a leading advocate for urban development and sustainability, has introduced a groundbreaking proposal known as the Urban Vertical Farming Initiative, UVFI. This policy aims to establish large-scale vertical farms within the city limits of major metropolitan areas, including Toronto and Vancouver, to combat food insecurity and reduce the environmental footprint of traditional agriculture. Montgomery's proposal suggests that by utilizing multi-story, hydroponic systems within urban spaces, cities can produce vast quantities of fresh produce year-round, significantly reducing the need for long-distance transportation and decreasing greenhouse gas emissions. The initiative, according to Montgomery, offers a viable solution to the dual challenges of population growth and climate change, ensuring that cities can become self-sustaining in their food production. However, the proposal has sparked intense debate among urban planners, economists, and environmentalists. One of the most prominent critics, Dr. Helena Foster, an economist specializing in urban infrastructure, has raised serious concerns about the financial feasibility of UVFI. According to Dr. Foster, the costs associated with constructing and maintaining vertical farms in densely populated areas are prohibitively high. She points out that the energy consumption required to maintain optimal growing conditions for large-scale hydroponic systems could negate many of the environmental benefits touted by Montgomery. Furthermore, she argues that these farms might drive up real estate prices, displacing vulnerable communities in the process. In response, Dr. Montgomery is countered by emphasizing the long-term environmental and social benefits of UVFI. He asserts that while the initial investment may be substantial, the project would ultimately pay for itself through reductions in transportation costs, increased food security, and job creation in urban agriculture. Montgomery also suggests that advancements in renewable energy technologies, such as solar panels and wind turbines, could be integrated into the vertical farming systems to mitigate the energy concerns raised by Dr. Foster. Adding to the complexity of the debate, Dr. Alan Greaves, an environmental scientist, questions whether urban vertical farming is the most effective solution to food insecurity. He argues that instead of investing in expensive urban projects, governments should prioritize supporting rural farming communities and improving traditional agricultural practices. Greaves contends that rural areas have the space, resources, and existing infrastructure to produce food more efficiently and at a lower cost. As the debate continues, policymakers are left to grapple with the question of whether urban vertical farming represents a revolutionary solution or a misguided investment.
I like that debate. So we had 3 speakers. We had one guy, the professor, who is supporting urban vertical farming because it'll reduce transportation costs, it'll be more effective, etc. We had the second speaker, who I don't really remember their name. I think it was a woman. She was against the proposition because it's more expensive. The initial investment is more expensive, and it might lead to higher cost of living. And then the third speaker said, nah, let's just stick with traditional farming methods in rural communities. Let's go. Fast questions. 3 minutes. What is Dr. Helena Foster's main critique? Okay, that was speaker number 2. Main critique of the urban vertical farming. Not food costs, higher maintenance, excessive construction expenses, increase real estate. Increase real estate was true, but was it her main one? Rising costs, no. She didn't talk about maintenance. Construction expenses, no. Okay, higher real estate costs. What is Dr. Montgomery's proposed benefit to the vertical? That was our main speaker. He was number 1. Enhancing food logistics, yes. Improving urban sustainability, kind of. Reducing transportation reliance, true. Cutting agricultural waste, no. Ooh, A, B, C. Enhancing food logistics. But at the same time, it's not more... Oh, we only have 2 minutes. Okay, definitely reducing transport reliance. That's a safe bet. How does Dr. Montgomery suggest addressing the energy concerns? Energy concerns, power sources, alternative power sources, like solar panels, renewable options. Yeah, renewable options. What issue does Dr. Allen, the last speaker, believe should be prioritized in urban farming, prioritized over urban farming? Rural land development, traditional farming methods. That's closer to our answer. Supporting rural farmers. Okay, supporting rural farmers is our closest answer. It combined A and B, kind of like these two. What potential negatives impact does UVFI, does Dr. Foster emphasize the potential impact social displacement, yes, because higher prices of apartment buildings means that poor communities will get displaced outside urban areas. Price, no. Reduced land, no. Okay, social displacement. What long-term outcome does Dr. Montgomery claim UVFI could achieve? Self-sustaining cities, optimize food production, solving climate challenges. Self-sustaining cities. Yeah, self-sustaining cities. Wow, we did that very well. Perhaps because I was working much faster than I normally do. So let's submit the test. On HZAD's platform, you're going to see your test results get generated, as well as your CELPIP score, your CLB, and you'll get some direct feedback. So you'll know exactly how to plan your next 4 weeks to prepare for the listening section specifically. Let's take a look. Submit test. All right, so first of all, I get all of my correct answers, which actually I did pretty well. Part 1, good. Part 2, good. Part 3, that was about the pollination. Oh, I was so confident there. Okay, no. It helps with research funding. No, it ensures the survival. I guessed on that one. Part number 5, crises tend to mask. Oh, it's because I heard the word mask. Higher level leadership qualities are more evident during emergencies. Well, I didn't feel confident. I can't believe I even got these ones right. Part 5, no answer. Yeah. Crisis did not mostly obscure their leadership skills due to overwhelming situations. Okay, I ran out of time for part 5, so I got 1 wrong. And part 6, not supporting traditional farming. Okay. So I only got a few wrong, which I'm very, very happy about. That was kind of a hard test, but really good topics. Next, we press next. I got a CELPIP 8, number of tasks. I got 31. I'm not exactly super happy with a CELPIP 8, but I did get like 5 questions wrong, so I understand. Generally, it's going to give me some feedback here. So it tells me where I have some strengths, understanding the main ideas, and then it also tells me about my weaknesses. Down here, actionable tips. So I need to practice active listening. Definitely, I need to focus on inference questions because that's where I lost most of my marks. I need to distinguish facts from opinions, and speed and accuracy because I ran out of time, and expand vocabulary. So giving me all of this feedback allows me to improve my marks. It gives me time to practice before I go into the real exam. And if we go on to the very final page, this is where you're going to see your 2-week action plan. Sometimes it's a 4-week if you did poorly, but I got an 8, so it's giving me a 2-week plan. That means for the listening section, I'm 2 weeks away from taking the exam, theoretically. So I have plans like my daily task, my inference practice, my facts versus opinion, week 2. Same thing, vocabulary, timed listening, motivational message. So with all of this information, I feel a lot more confident going into the exam because I'm 2 weeks away for the listening section. What you're going to do is then take the same exam for the speaking, writing, and reading. And by the end of that, you'll know exactly your mark, your CELPIP score, and you'll be ready to take the exam if you have your desired score on the mock exams. So if you're looking for additional support, if you want to get in touch with a real tutor that can help you with the exam, go ahead, contact us at HZADseducation.com. We have live tutors if you're not very comfortable with AI or if you don't like doing the mock exam online. We have real tutors that will help you prepare for the CELPIP exam. I'm Scott from HZAD Education. It's a pleasure doing the videos with you, and I'll see you next time.